A sitting U.S. senator just got censured and threatened with demotion, not for corruption, not for misconduct, but for telling the military to follow the law. What Mark Kelly revealed should alarm every American who cares about free speech, civilian oversight, and the Constitution.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out here. Let me just say a couple things up front. So in mid-November, myself and 5 colleagues, we did a video saying something pretty basic. Don't follow illegal orders. Means to follow the law. It's in the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Donald Trump didn't like it, said we should be hanged, executed. When I guess that didn't work out, for me personally, prosecuted under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So then yesterday, I received this letter that censures me and threatens to reduce me in rank after 25 years in the United States Navy, flying 39 combat missions, 4 times in space, decades in service, threatening to reduce my rank, so demote me because of something I said, something that was clearly lawful. Also something, by the way, that Secretary Hegseth has said on multiple occasions back in 2016. So this is certainly the height of hypocrisy. I think it's also important to point out that in this letter, where you might have thought it was just about the video, we find out it's not just about the video that we made. This is also about other things I've said. Like, they think I don't have the right to criticize them when they fire admirals and generals. It is specifically in here on the first page. And to say that they have surrounded themselves with a bunch of yes men, I think that's a fact, especially in the White House. So this is over an extended period of time that they want to make it perfectly clear that I am not allowed to say what I think. And that's dangerous. Every other retired service member like me, or every veteran, every active duty service member, maybe every U.S. citizen is going to say, hey, if they can criticize and stop, a United States senator from doing his job in speaking out, what does that mean for the rest of us? So this is really concerning. We're going to, do what we can and, fight this with, every tool that we have. But this is what Secretary Hegseth did in sending this letter is an erosion of every U.S. citizen's First Amendment rights.
But aren't you likely to lose this fight with the secretary?
Well, first of all, this is a letter he sent, goes in my record. We'll respond to that. I don't think I'm going to lose a, fight with him, but that's not the point. The point is that they're trying to shut me up, and that's not going to happen. So whether I win or lose this, that's not the consequential thing. The consequential thing is, do Americans still, speak out against this government? I view that not only as a right, but a responsibility, especially in my job on the Armed Services Committee. I have oversight responsibility for the Department of Defense. I sit on the Intelligence Committee. So whether I lose or win this fight, we're gonna fight this with everything we have, because I'm certainly in the right here. I said something that I believed, that was lawful, that was true. This White House's response is I should be executed.
There are 5 other lawmakers who were on that video with you, but you were the only one who has been targeted like this so far from Secretary Hegseth. Do you think that the same treatment is coming for your fellow lawmakers? Why do you think you've been singled out?
Well, it's one of the details of this is that I'm retired, so it's easier for them to target me because I'm a retired member of the military. So,
what are the tools at your disposal? You mentioned you're going to use all of them. What are they?
Yeah, well, there are things that I can do. I'm discussing that with my attorneys, and we'll have a response at the appropriate time.
Are you getting support from your colleagues in the Senate and other veterans? Are you getting any support?
Oh, yeah. I'm hearing from veterans, all the time. This morning, I was up in New York doing the CBS morning show, and as I walked in the door, one of the security guys just said, hey, I was talking to my son about this just yesterday, and he wanted to pass on, if I ever saw you, to thank you. Because this means a lot to him in his position. The guy was an intel officer in the Army in the signal corps. And I hear that repeatedly. I also hear it from some of my Senate colleagues, sometimes on the other side of the aisle, sometimes publicly, sometimes not publicly. Folks are, unfortunately, they're afraid to speak out against this president in any way because they see there are consequences for doing that. There shouldn't be consequences. I think it's important that folks like myself and the other folks in this video just stand up to this guy.
I know you think that it's about kind of quieting you down, but do you also think it's to a certain degree undercutting the message that you were trying to share in that video? That
I think the message is loud and clear.
But is the secretary trying to scare people that might?
Of course he is. Yeah, of course he is. He's trying to silence everybody. But this is something you're taught in the military pretty early in your career. You're not, depending on what kind of job you're in and who your boss is, you may or may not be reminded of it much. But it's a pretty simple message that we don't follow unlawful orders. And when orders and the law are in conflict, you follow the law. It's on a plaque at West Point. I think they're concerned about. I mean, he mentioned some stuff in here that actually in this letter that they're not even true. You could go take a close look at it, and we'll have a response to it. But yeah, they're trying to stifle speech, not just from U.S. senators, but from the public as well. This president doesn't like people that disagrees with him. That's why you could see the difference in who these cabinet members are this time compared to his first term. Bunch of yes people around him that will never disagree with him. It's a recipe for disaster.
Will you bring this up with the secretary tomorrow with the Venezuela briefing?
Those briefings, whether or not you get to bring something up, depends on how early you get there. So it often depends on my schedule. Well, the 100 senators in the room, and as you might realize, they'll spend a lot of time up front to make sure there isn't a lot of time at the end for questions. So there's generally, 5 or 6 people. So it's going to depend on my schedule. But I will probably, with him, bring up something that is connected to the brief we're having on Venezuela.
When do you expect your response?
What's that?
When do you expect your response?
My response on this, publicly? Public response? I don't know. Probably in the next few days.
Is it your impression the secretary has the final call on this, or is it an independent board? I mean, how does this process work?
Well, first of all, if there is a process, I'm pretty confident that this Secretary of Defense, they're not going to follow it, so it doesn't matter. So I really have no idea. That would be a good question for you to ask him.
Well, can you take it to court? Can you actually take it to...
Maybe. Sure. We'll see.
Has the secretary ever spoken to you personally prior to doing all of this? Has there been any?
Well, I mean, at the committee hearing, I, asked him some very pointed questions when his confirmation hearing about his background and his lack of qualification for this job. I spoke to him one other time, I think, in hearing before that video came out, and then I just spoke to him the last time we had a hearing in the SCIF, where I was asking him questions about the Venezuelan boat strikes, and then he decided to, bring this up.
Your Republican
he was a little sensitive about the subject.
Your Republican colleagues haven't really publicly backed you on this one vocally.
Somehow.
Are you disappointed?
Gillis did yesterday.
Are you disappointed more haven't spoken out?
Absolutely. Because this is not just about me. This is about the freedom of speech of all Americans, including U.S. senators.
Senator Kelly, on kind of a different topic here, it's the anniversary of January 6th.
Yes.
The White House just put out a website blaming in part the Capitol Police for the escalation that happened that resulted in injuries to officers and the damage that happened to the building. Can you get your response?
Yeah, Donald Trump should review the tape. He sent a mob to Capitol Hill that beat up a bunch of police officers, assaulted them. Capitol Hill police officer died because of this. He should go back or have somebody to explain to him what actually happened on January 6th, 5 years ago. If he can't remember, he's got people around him that could get him the record.
You had mentioned in this...
It's an obnoxious thing to say. It's wrong. It's unbecoming of any American, especially the president of the United States.
You said if you have a chance to ask Hegseth the question tomorrow, it'll be about the Venezuela situation. What specifically do you plan to press them on?
Well, I think this is going to be about the, Maduro, about the, the operation. Manu, as you might imagine, I often ask questions about the operational specifics on these things to find out exactly how something like this was planned and conducted. I come from an operational background as a, combat pilot, and it's the stuff I'm also generally, interested in. I want to, know what kind of resources were used, to extract Maduro and his wife, and also what authorities. They talk about how this is a law enforcement operation, but if in fact 150 airplanes were used from multiple services, it feels less to me law enforcement and more like a military operation. And then, do you have the legal authorization to do this? We're going to have a vote on this week. I don't think that we want to be bogged down in Venezuela. That's not in the best interest of the American people. This president should be, not focused on things like, Venezuela, and focused on bringing down the cost for the American people, including my constituents, who are dealing with, high rent and grocery prices are much more expensive than they were previously. And at the same time, this president destroyed the health care for millions of Americans. He felt the need to give a big giant tax cut to the wealthiest Americans. And that's partially paid for by taking away these ACA subsidies. And what that means to people that I've spoken to in Yuma and Chandler and Sedona is I've got constituents, their healthcare costs are going from hundreds of dollars a month to thousands of dollars a month, and they can't afford it. And this president said he was going to help people. He's not helping people. He's just making it worse for the average American.
How does Venezuela impact the Senate's agenda when it comes to healthcare? How is this going to impact the agenda?
Well, this occupies time and effort when we could be focused on other things.
Senator
Do you
Kelly.
think this tactic that the Department of War is using with you would be happening if General Kane or Driscoll were running the Department of War? Do you think it's exclusive to Hegseth, this tactic?
I think Hegseth is a uniquely unqualified individual. I think if you were looking for a job that maybe he could have done well, it might have been spokesperson. From what I've seen, I would actually, start to change my mind about that. He's not qualified to be secretary. This guy does not have the background. I also don't think he understands. Talks about how he's like a member of the military he served. I thank him for his service. He just doesn't get it.
On negotiations on healthcare, do you think that you can overcome the issues with the Hyde Amendment? Do you think that there's a realistic possibility of doing something on a bipartisan basis?
It's going to be a challenge. A lot of my Republican colleagues are, dug in on that, but we're going to keep working on it. And if it takes us all the way through, for months or 2026 or beyond, we're going to fix this because it is not fair to the American people that they're losing their health care coverage so a bunch of billionaires can get a tax cut.
What do you think in terms of the work hours resolution this week?
I think we're going to vote on it.
How do you think that vote's going to go?
I just got back. I haven't talked to a lot of folks. I need to.
And then have you heard reports of
The censure letter that you were reading from Secretary Hegseth mentions the possibility of court-martialing you going forward in the last draft.
Yeah.
Does that indicate to you that this is not ending anytime soon?
Well, they are trying to, their level of intimidation extends beyond, what has happened. They talk about things I've said between June and December, including that they think it's inappropriate for me to criticize them for firing admirals and generals. Now, remember, I'm on the Armed Services Committee. I voted for those admirals and generals to have those jobs, and Pete Hegseth fired those people, in my view, because of the color of their skin and their gender. That's a horrible thing to do, and a horrible message to people out there, that you have to look a certain way to serve this country at the highest level. And I was critical of them in my role as a member of the committee, and they didn't like it. That's one of the reasons they have censured me. And at the end of the letter, they threaten criminal prosecution if they don't like what I say going forward. Let me make it perfectly clear. This letter, or anything that Pete Hegseth says or does to me, is in no way going to affect the way I do my job and represent my constituents in the United States Senate. Ain't happening. So, his option, right now is he can continue with this kind of bullshit, or he can go take a hike. That's his options. And if I have an opportunity to, tell him that tomorrow, maybe I will.
Senator, how would you respond to a court-martial proceeding if the secretary goes that direction?
I would respond appropriately.
You would participate in that? If they
I would do what the appropriate thing is. I spent 25 years in the Navy. I get this now, right? If they want to court-martial me, bring it on. I'm not afraid of Pete Hegseth or the full force of the Department of Defense or the Department of Justice, for that matter, because I said something that was accurate, truthful, in the Uniform Code of Military Justice. They didn't like it. They need to get over themselves.
All right,
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
This is one of the most disturbing escalations we've seen yet. Senator Mark Kelly didn't call for mutiny. He didn't encourage insubordination. He stated the most basic principle drilled into every service member. You do not follow illegal orders. That principle is literally engraved in military law and taught at West Point. Yet Pete Hegseth responded with a censure letter that threatens demotion, reputational harm, and even hints at criminal consequences, aimed at a retired Navy officer with 25 years of service, 39 combat missions, and 4 space flights. That's not discipline, that's intimidation. Kelly makes something chillingly clear. This wasn't about one video. The letter targets months of speech, including his criticism of generals being fired and his refusal to fall in line. In other words, the message is simple. Criticize us and we'll come after you. Even more alarming, Kelly says colleagues privately support him but are afraid to speak publicly. That tells you everything. Fear has entered the room. This isn't about Mark Kelly winning or losing a procedural fight. This is about whether any American, especially veterans and lawmakers, can speak freely without retaliation from the executive branch. If this can happen to a U.S. Senator on the Armed Services Committee, it can happen to anyone.